So as some of you that use Garmin devices know, a few weeks ago there was an alleged ransomware attack on the Garmin Connect website, and or I guess with Garmin in general, because they also do aviation navigation stuff as well as GPS for bicycles and smartwatches and all that kind of stuff. And anyways, they had an alleged ransomware attack and a few weeks ago, and their website, everything was down for like a whole week, and so it was kind of annoying because I had to manually upload my rides to Strava, actually connecting my Edge 520 to the computer, and it's kind of a pain in the butt. And so I'm on these Facebook groups, and there's people saying, well, I don't have Garmin, I have Wahoo, and that didn't happen to me, ha ha ha. And I'm like, besides all the nonsense on Facebook, it made me think, well, I don't have all my data stored in all in one place, because when I started out in 2015, I was riding a hybrid bicycle, a flat bar, before I went to road bikes, and I was on an app called Runtastic Road Bike, and then I got my Garmin because when I got a new bike, I wasn't able to use my cat eye with that anymore. So that's when I ended up getting a Garmin account. And so, you can link your Garmin account to your Strava and it automatically uploads. But when the Garmin website's not operational, you can't do that. So when Garmin finally got their website back up, I got all the information off of Garmin and Strava and Runtastic, and I decided that I was going to put it all on a spreadsheet. So it took me quite a while, but this is what I ended up doing. So you can see I started out in 2015. I only rode like 1,000 miles, and my average speed was like 10.6 miles an hour. Average miles per ride, 21 miles. And just for kicks, I wanted to get all this into one spot. And so you can see, like in 2016, I rode almost 3,300 miles at 221,000 feet of climbing. My average speed was now 13 miles an hour. And you can see these trends over time. I was riding a little, things like riding a little farther on each ride. And you can see like how many calories you burn, the elevation in each ride, how many times I've done a certain ride. Like you can see here, I've done the scenic overlook, the Red Rock Scenic Overlook from my house like a bazillion times. And today in 2020, I'm looking at 2016 here, in 2020 I'm like so sick of that ride. You can see why. I've done it like 40 times or something in 2016, and now I'm burnt out on it. But so I did this whole thing from 2017, 2018, 2019, all the way up to current, and now every time I do a ride, I just input it into the spreadsheet, and I have these running totals. So if I go back to 2019, you can see here I actually rode like over 5,000 miles. I think I missed a ride or two somewhere, but I rode like 5,000 miles, climbed 230,000 feet. I wanted to see what my average heart rate was, my average power, average elevation per ride, how many calories I burn per ride, what the average temperature is, how many miles per ride. So this is one thing that you can't really get, I don't think, from Strava or Garmin or something, is to see trends over time. Like if I go back to 2017, my average heart rate was higher than it is in 2020. So anyways, yeah, you can see trends over time, and I notice there's a correlation between my cadence and average heart rate. I notice that the higher my cadence is, the higher my heart rate is also. So I found for me, and the data here just confirms it, that I'm not one of those high cadence people. I'm a grinder, like my average cadence is like 75 or so on a ride, and that feels comfortable to me. If I try to do this spin to win thing, 8,200, all I do is jack my heart rate way up, and I'm over lactate threshold, and it's really just, there's nothing good that comes out of it. So for me personally, I do much better with a lot slower cadence, and that's just how my body is. So, and of course, I had to manually input all this stuff from 3 different sources. I had the Runtastic app in 2015, part of 2016, then I went to Garmin, and then in 2017 I joined Strava, and so I had to gather information from 3 different sources and get them all in this spreadsheet. It took several days. It was very tedious, and I just wanted to get done at a certain point. But so then I have on this other tab, I have everything tabulated. How many, okay, so like 2015, how many miles, elevation, average speed, average power. I didn't have a power meter at that time. 2016, 2017, 2018, I started adding more data. Because I thought it was more relevant in the last few years as opposed to when I first started in 2015. I mean, I thought an 8-mile ride was a long ride in 2015. So as of 2020, I've ridden 122 times, about 3,000 miles. You can see my average speed has come up every year. My average watch has stayed pretty consistent. Average heart rate has come down over time. I've noticed that this year I'm not doing as much climbing because I'm just so tired of climbing. Like where I live in this part of Las Vegas, there's just so many hills, because everything's built on these alluvial fans coming off the mountains, and these things literally go for miles and miles down. If you're coming up out of the valley, I mean, you can go literally have a nonstop climb of like 50 miles from the Las Vegas Valley to say to Mount Charleston. And then of course whenever I go north-south I have to go over these rolling hills, and so it's very hard for me to have a flat ride. I mean, the flattest ride I can do is like 400 feet. But so like 2018 I did a lot of climbing. Average elevation per ride was like almost 1,800 feet. This year I'm like in half of that. So apparently I'm really tired of climbing all the time. So that's one cool thing that you can see by doing a spreadsheet. And then the other thing I thought would be interesting to do is see how many times I've done certain routine rides. And so, for example, going back to that scenic overlook, the Red Rock Scenic Overlook off Highway 159, I've done it 60 times since 2015, not counting the times I pass it going to Blue Diamond, the times I do Blue Diamond in the Red Rock Scenic Loop, when I go to the big Coke can at Highway 159 and 160 where they meet. Yeah, so when you look at things this way, you're like, you can go, oh, well, no wonder I'm sick of that ride. Look how many times I've done it. So if you like to look at data and crunch numbers and look at things like, all this sort of stuff, how many miles you've ridden over the year and how many rides, average climbing per ride, that sort of thing. This is a really neat way to do it, I think. And you don't have to pay anyone to do it. You can just do it yourself. All you need is Microsoft Excel or, any kind of spreadsheet program. And so that brings me up to the other thing I wanted to talk about is on the Facebook group, while the Garmin website was down, somebody was saying that they found a way to go into their Garmin Connect account and export a CSV file. And they explain that if you want to get all your rides, you keep scrolling down until you get all the way to where you can't go down anymore. So your earliest recorded ride in Garmin. In my case, it was like 641 rides, and that takes a little while, but once you get down there, you can go over here and click on Export CSV. You can save it, and then you can go on your file manager and say Open, and then it'll automatically open into Excel, and you get a spreadsheet that has all of this data here. So this one goes even more into more detail than the spreadsheet I created. And this has the date, the distance, the calories, the time, the average heart rate, maximum heart rate, average speed, max speed, elevation gain, elevation loss, average cadence, max cadence, normalized power, training stress score, average power average 20-minute power, average power, max power, how many times, total strokes, I guess that's how many times you did one revolution of the cranks, the times you spent climbing. And that's an interesting one. I don't quite understand how that works, because like this right here, I'm pretty sure I wasn't climbing the entire time. I mean, that was like half the ride was climbing and the other half was going down, back down to my house. But anyways, and then it has minimum temperature, and that's interesting because in Garmin it also will give you average temperature and maximum temperature, but for whatever reason here it's saying minimum temperature. But so anyways, yeah, once you import the CXV, you can do anything you want with it. Like I put in all the grid lines. This just came in as a bunch of data, no grid lines. I did the colored columns because when you scroll all the way down to the bottom after 641 rides, it's easy to forget which one was the calories and heart rate and average speed and elevation and all that. Which I guess every so often you could copy this line here and insert it so that when you scroll down you always have that to refer to. But so anyways, and then if you really want to get crazy, you can look at things like, this is what I wanted to do since March of 2016 to current, well, almost current. This is like a few weeks ago now, but I've cycled 17,500 miles. I've burned 560,000 calories. I've climbed 940,000 feet. And this is the one I thought was interesting. I've cranked them pedals at least 4 million times. 4 million revolutions. Like, that's pretty crazy. So when you talk about like repetitive use injuries, that's the sort of thing, like, even though cycling's low impact, you can see if your bike fit is not good, you're gonna have issues when over the course of 5 years you've turned them pedals over 4 million times, and that's pretty astounding actually. So that's another way that you can save your data from Garmin anyways. I don't have a Wahoo or any of these other cycling computers. I don't have accounts with them. I don't know how they work. But with Garmin, I'm assuming they probably do the same thing with these other ones. But with Garmin, this is how you can do that. You can have a spreadsheet with all this data. It's probably easier than going in and manually looking at every single ride you did since 2015 and manually importing all this stuff. But that's the way I had to do it because the way I started, and I had 3 different platforms all this data was on. So anyways, I hope that someone out there finds this useful, and if you do, let me know.